We are Our speaker today is Mr. Marcus Udokang. Mr. Marcus Udokang is a seasoned business analyst and project management professional. And today he's going to be taking us through today's topic. And without further ado, Marcus, if you want to unmute yourself and take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Seasoned, I don't know if I'm seasoned, but we'll see. As years go by and you tend to learn more and more and more, you realize you know less and less and less. So I feel I'm slightly less seasoned than I was 10 years ago. Anyhow, with that being said, just a moment here. Let me see what I'm looking at. All right, today we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about, the business analyst in an agile world. Perhaps if you want to ask a question, feel free to do so during the presentation. I don't mind stopping to answer a question, or you can compile all the questions until the end. Either way, I'm fine with that. So I guess I should start by saying hello, everyone, and hope you're all doing well from wherever in Canada you're coming from, or from wherever in the world you're tuning in from. I want to also thank NIPCA and Black Tech for having me present today. And welcome to today's presentation of the business analyst in an agile world. Just out of curiosity, before I get started here, maybe I can see from a show of hands, how many folks out there work in 100% agile environment? Doesn't matter what role you have, could be project manager, it could be business analyst. You can put up your little emoticon thumb or hand. Just out of curiosity, if anyone works in a 100% agile world. And the points are coming in, almost no one. How many people work in a 100% waterfall environment? Just out of curiosity. Not many at all. How about a hybrid waterfall and agile environment? Just out of curiosity, we've got a couple here, you see, a lot more. I did this presentation not too long ago, a few weeks ago, and I had a survey up where people could go to Mentimeter and they voted, and it came out to about 68% of people work in a hybrid environment. And it was about 7% that work in 100% agile, and the rest, almost 17%, very small, work in 100% agile environment. And obviously from today's hand results, we see it's pretty much almost the same. So it's good to know a bit of hybrid between your agile and part waterfall environment. That's what I'm going to talk about today. Or how do you move from a waterfall into an agile environment? So I want to really focus on three areas today. I want to talk about the history of the business analyst. I want to talk about why have a business analyst in an agile world, because traditionally business analysts come from a waterfall environment. And then a bit about the project manager. What about a project manager in all this? And how can the business analyst work cohesively with a project manager? Let's begin with a history of the business analyst. Now, where does the business analyst fit in an agile practice? And how can the business analyst really benefit an agile team? Because traditionally, a business analyst, like I mentioned a few seconds ago, was really that glue. The business analyst comes from the waterfall environment, and historically, the BA has been that glue that's helped to bridge the gap between the business and the technical teams. Hopefully, we hope, making the life of a project manager or a technical architect or even a manager of any sort, we hope that a BA can make that person's work much easier. Now, in an agile world, it's all about minimizing your requirements and trying to minimize any potential roadblocks between the business and the technical teams. So that really we can really ask the question, what does the BA do now? Does this mean that there are minimal or maybe almost no duties for the business analyst in an agile world? And where does the BA fit in a Scrum team? Because Scrum is all part and parcel of this agile world. Is the job title important? I mean, does it really matter what people call you at work as a title? At the end of the day, do what really needs to be done to support the delivery of value. And that's the pinnacle piece of being a business analyst. In an agile world, really, it's all about focusing on high value deliverables. So it's all about reflecting on the work that gets done. And in this world, you have stakeholder and relationship management. You've got those team dynamics, and they're all the same whether you're in waterfall or whether you're in agile. So just a moment here. You know what I thought? I didn't realize I wasn't sharing my screen, so I apologize. Let me share my screen. I apologize for that. So let's go back, actually, so you can see these beautiful screens. So that was the intro screen. Those are the 3 points we're going to look at. And we're looking right now at the business analyst. We're focusing on the high value deliverables of the business analyst. Now, I was mentioning that stakeholder and relationship management, the team dynamics in a waterfall and agile environment are pretty much the same. So we want to try to reduce misunderstandings in any environment that you work in. And you want to get a common understanding of what it is that the user wants and what's in it for the stakeholder. This is crucial. If there is a misunderstanding or something that your stakeholder is talking about that doesn't quite sound right, a recommendation is to try to bring out those questions during your meetings. Don't ignore them. And if you misrepresent, if you misinterpret what the stakeholders are saying, then, or if perhaps you think you know the answer without discussing it, you will deliver the wrong solution. So you've got to have a concrete plan, you've got to have a concrete goal to help shape the future state. And this is what business analysis is all about. It's all about creating that future state from the current state. So what is the project to achieve in terms of value is what you have to look at. And you've also got to validate your ideas that you think are going to work. In this case, perhaps you can build a prototype along with what they call a minimal viable product, an MVP. And you're going to create this minimal viable product, a smaller version of your larger product, and you're going to test it. And that test might be good, it might be positive, or it might be bad, it might be negative. But if you don't have a goal or a plan in mind, if you don't have a business model, then you're not going to have a product, not even that minimal viable product. You also have to ask yourself, are you doing just enough at the right point in time? Whether you're doing data flow diagrams, whether you're documenting user stories, whether you're providing use cases, you've got to build a deep backlog to help support what's going to come ahead in that future state. So you've got to flush out your fundamentals in the beginning. This is crucial. And this helps with you better with your release planning. It helps you get better release planning for your future state. And it helps you to understand the upcoming releases, how all the releases create this sort of overall solution down the road in that future state. So you're probably best to advocate for a sandbox, for a prototyping environment that you're going to test your MVP in, your minimal viable product. You want to try to get ahead of the value by doing your analysis ahead of time. And this means you're going to have to understand the data, you're going to have to understand the data terms and the data flow. And you're going to have to try to figure out how to demonstrate the software in this test environment. And you're going to have to start bringing up issues, problems early in your project. Is the testing working as expected? You got to start discussing that with the project manager, with the technical architects, with whoever's on your team. And if you have those purposeful conversations, you can try to plant the seeds of doubt, if necessary, in the beginning, instead of at the end when it's too late. Let's look at the Agile perspective. For those who may not know, and even those who do know, Agile is really a mindset. It's kind of like a culture. It's a way to look at work. And it's about how your team can get on with things, so to speak. How to help the team get rid of blockers. This is key in Agile. How to speak the same language across your project team, across your organization. And Agile really doesn't look at processes initially. That's not high on the priority list. It looks at people. And it's the combination of the skills and the experiences, then developing processes, developing systems that help to leverage upon those people. Your processes really need to be flexible. This is key. And they have to be able to adapt to the team dynamics, because the team dynamics are constantly changing. And they're going to have to also be adaptable to new members who come in and out of that team. We're trying to build value that resonates with customers. And that is something that is meaningful. Agile is all about your behavior. It's all about your outlook. It's all about how you engage with the team, how you engage with the customers, how you understand those nuances of the product, those subtle nuances of the product. Now, we know that a well-defined problem, we know that clear requirements are going to go a long way to help you create this effective solution, this future state. And that's going to help to add value to the business that you're working for. And the real focus in Agile, it's not about managing the project. I mean, that's what project managers do, right? It's not necessarily about enacting all those processes. What it is about is outcomes. It's not a project-centric environment anymore. It's a product-centric environment. And that's the key in Agile, in Scrum. Now, in an Agile world, pardon me as I have a sip of water. In an Agile world, we have very different perspectives. Or should I say we have a very different perspective, a very different mindset, where it's all about these outcomes. It's not about these outputs. It's all about the product, not the project. It's how the business analyst can work in harmony with the project manager, the product owner, the scrum master, the developer, all those folks on your team. And I want to point out that some organizations who adopt or that adopt Scrum, that adopt Agile, some of them retain the business analyst role, and other organizations completely eliminate it. And they've opted maybe to transition the business analyst to what they call a product owner role. And this product owner sits within a software environment, pretty much only. That's what Agile and Scrum are all about. It's all about software development. So, with that said, why have a business analyst in an Agile world anyway? In organizations that are transforming, there might be some fear of what we call retrospectives. And those who are familiar with Agile understand retrospectives. It can be hard to get people to speak up during your review meetings. And it takes time to overcome this issue. So how do you implement change effectively if people can't speak up? You have to do it in stages. And you can't expect people to change just like that. I mean, we humans don't function this way. Do you push things on organizations without explaining why you want to push this idea, this change? You know, there has to be this discovery process. You got to start small. You got to allow your team to learn. Don't tell them how to do things. This team, the business analyst, really needs to help discover things on their own. They see the results and they start believing in it. This is fundamental within an agile environment. People dynamics may not always work well, we know that. So you've got to be conscious of who you're bringing together on your team. If Agile works to get the job done, great. Otherwise, you've got to be flexible enough to think of something else that can work. Maybe that other thing is waterfall. Maybe it's a combination, this hybrid environment that works better. What's the vision of the product? I mean, what are you going to achieve by producing this product? You got to test the solution, right? But also, you got to test the product as well. This is an iterative process. So you have to be open to experimentation throughout this process, throughout all these stages. You've got to gather metrics to see if it's a good idea for the product. And this way, you're going to create better intuition about what you should be developing. And in this environment, in Agile, it's usually what they call an emergent product that's coming in. So the requirements really will be discovered over time through this iterative process. You create a bit, go back to the customer. Is this what you want? Oh no, just change it this way. All right, go back a bit, go back to the customer. Is this what you want? This is what we mean by this iterative process. And this helps you understand where value lies as people start using the product, even if it's just that minimal viable product initially. So you've got to also eliminate blockers to allow for that discovery process, right? How do we transition a business analyst into Agile, into this Agile environment, this Agile world? You've got to identify what activities in an Agile world you'll need to stop doing as a business analyst, and what activities you will need to start doing as a business analyst, or rather as a BA in an Agile world, and what you will need to continue doing as a business analyst. You probably should have a backlog of personal improvements, actionable outcomes. And you got to ask yourself a few questions too. What areas of the product do you need to learn? And how do you plan to learn those? What artifacts do I need to learn how to create? And by artifacts, I mean the product vision, the roadmaps, this kind of thing. I mean, what steps do you take to close any gaps to allow you to see that big picture, that big holistic picture of the project? It's not just that project you're working on, it's why you're doing it for the organization. That's the big picture. And how do I build relationships with customers? I mean, stakeholders, with product managers, with project managers. How do I do that? You've got to have the right amount of detail to get the job done. And this is where shared understanding is crucial. So you've got to facilitate that shared understanding on your team. For example, is there enough information for the development team to build and the testers to test? Having too much detail means that you need to break up your user story into smaller chunks. It's understanding what your team needs and really making sure that you can deliver, that you can test that one user story, that one little small piece of business value that you need to get out the door first before you touch anything else. What skills do you need to leverage? I mean, leaders want fast development, that's true, and you can't have leaders wait until you're done. So you've got to do a bit of discovery in synchronization with your development. It's just the way of things. This brings us to the project manager. I mean, what about the project manager in this Agile world? Well, Agile project managers, it's all about empowering the team, removing the impediments to their progress, anticipating problems. You got to step aside. You got to allow the team to make decisions and all that kind of stuff. Does your business analyst really understand the product deeply? Do they understand the product technicalities? Do they understand how that product operates? You see, better stories are made from this product knowledge depthness. It's not so much the story, but having better quality acceptance criteria with just enough detail. You build a better product, you test a better product, you end up releasing a better product. But we all know that you can't predict everything, right? But you do need a business analyst who does that role to help create your value. They're not going to be perfect, but they got to help create that value for you. They will be able to predict some things, especially those who have experience in the past. It's a business context that really holds a high importance on adaptability, continuous innovation throughout this process, that continuous delivery of value. And it's that context really that changes the focus, which is about maximizing the value of the work that the team performs at all times throughout that process. But it's also about timing. Find out where that value lies. What should people be working on next? Let's take a look at discovery and delivery map. Sorry, discovery and delivery roadmap, the strategy as they call it. Now, discovery replaces requirements, and requirements are the common thing that you hear about in a waterfall environment. And usually they'll say requirements usually come first. But Agile places the focus at the end, the product that it will be used by customers. It's that feedback loop. The customer has the product. What are we learning from that? As opposed to give me the requirements first. So you got to have an understanding of your landscape you are working in, even the landscape that you're working with. You need an opportunity map. You need a user story mapping. You need a customer journey map. You got to know what the pains of your experience are going to be. So you got to get this end-to-end view of the project. And user story mapping allows you to understand by digging deeper and deeper into the user experience. And this is key in Agile. It's all about the user. What am I going to give the user? Not what I think the user needs. So you got to map out the problem. So you find out, where do I start? And you're not going to get anywhere with low level of detail. That's going to take up too much of your time. So you got to start high level and go down. You also have to define your expectations of where to deliver the product. You've got to get a broad view and decide where to delve into. You got to do those, what they call a thin slice, through all your planning. You got to release layer by layer, kind of like cutting a carrot. You go by layer. And you've also got to convey priorities to your team. You got to highlight the recent accomplishments. Good job, well done. But you don't want to promise things that you can't deliver, because they're not going to trust you if you do that. You've got to share priorities with other teams, with your customers, with your stakeholders. Keep them in the loop. And you've also got to regularly demonstrate your progress. And one good start is by doing that minimal viable product. You've got to be transparent, essentially, is what I'm saying. You've got to be a leader who is recognized for being a creative problem solver, who can synthesize information, can explain different points of view, and who can clearly define those expectations and those responsibilities. I also want to point out that at the end of a sprint, maybe at the end of a project, you've built this product or part of it. Maybe a company decides to deprioritize the item. Maybe they don't want it anymore. Maybe the client doesn't want it. So in this case, you haven't wasted any time. You haven't done lots of unnecessary work. You just built the minimum viable product. You didn't do a number of requirements for the entire product. You just went small stage at a time. The project got deprioritized, and that's fine. You can now move on your resources to another project without having wasted a lot of time. What about business and customer orientation? You want to do, like I mentioned, this complete path through that value stream, kind of like that journey map. Whether you're changing something, whether you're adding something, you got to see where that change falls into place along that path. And that's the way to test assumptions about any solutions. You've got to be a voice for the business side. You've got to be that central point of contact to clarify any questions, to help them reach consensus, to help provide that ample fuel to help drive those business decisions for that specific product. Is your product aligned with customer needs, with business needs? And to understand that, you need domain knowledge of the customer, of the data, to help better manage your team. And part of doing that is to use epics, to use user stories, to help maximize that value of the product. When we talk about Agile, we're talking about emergent requirements. Emergent requirements means that you don't know all the requirements in advance. You can't know all the requirements in advance. So how do you overcome this issue? Well, you need to make informed decisions based on that stakeholder feedback, based on the customer feedback. And you've got to, over time, progressively refine your understanding of the product, your team's understanding of the product. And you're concerned with the space between the business strategy all the way down to the release planning. And you're essentially going to try to communicate with your implementation team, with the developers, with those quality assurance groups, with the technical experts. So you need just enough requirements so you can maybe even shortlist people on your team, get the best people to work on your team. Find those few people you need that you can work with easily, that they can work with easily amongst themselves, and let them demonstrate their value to you. That's why you've got to get that quick proof of concept, that quick MVP, and see what happens from that. Let's take a quick look at focal points, skills, competencies, and a bit of communication. You're going to be the focal point during meetings. You might ask, do I need a cost-benefit analysis? Should your team rank their project initiatives from 1 to 10? That might mean less time, less work for you. The group's going to know, obviously, where their biggest value project is. So maybe they need to prioritize by listing items of importance from 1 to 10. But you're the focal point during those meetings. As a business analyst, maybe even as someone who's transitioned into a product owner role, and you know what's needed to build the right thing. which I have to admit is far more important than building the thing right. And what do I mean by building the right thing? I'm talking about communicating with the customer, maximizing your product value, having a vision for the product, making decisions on product releases, and even helping to facilitate the stakeholders during meetings. And when I'm talking about building the thing right, I mean maximizing that collaboration with your Scrum team or with your Agile team. But at the end of the day, it's the value that is vital. And you're going to prioritize those features with your stakeholders initially. You're going to be able to make an informed decision on what value is more important if you talk to the stakeholders, even to the customers, because the customers are your stakeholders, the end users of the product. Let's take a look at skills and competencies. Do you have business and technical experience to ensure that the product delivery is aligned with the required vision that you have, or that the stakeholders have, that the business organization, that the customers have? You got to have a good grasp, a good knowledge of implementation methodologies like Agile. You also should be able to understand different approaches. You've got to understand the market that you're working in. You've got to understand market analysis. You've got to understand the product roadmap, the release planning, the tracking. There's a whole variety of things you'll learn over time. You've got to learn how to collaborate with teams, how to escalate issues when needed, how to improve processes. And also important in that is how to provide clarifications and how to drive decisions. That brings us to communication. It's all about communication with this dose of passion. It's all about individuals and actions over processes and tools. This is key in Agile. You have to deliver early, you have to deliver often. You got to truncate your stories into bite-sized chunks. So each of your stories takes just a few days to finish, to tackle. And the teams, the developers, the stakeholders that you're working with, anyone in the loop should attend a 1-hour weekly meeting, daily stand-ups. And these meetings really help you to provide that frequent feedback loop. You've got that steady delivery to your end users in that meeting. You've got steady delivery to your stakeholders in that meeting. You've got constant communication with all the actors that are involved. And this helps you take into account any risks, whether they're business risks, technical risks, cost or scheduled risks. And you've also got to lead with influence. You've got to earn the respect of your team. You've got to build credibility, but also consensus. And to do this, you need not just legitimacy, you also need authority to get the work done. Authority is planted in your job title, but legitimacy is building trust with your coworkers so that they will do something when you ask them to, especially if you're a senior business analyst or you're a product owner, you're a leader of some sort. Now, what about communication with stakeholders? This is a continuation of communication. On any project, the relationship between a business analyst, the stakeholders, the project manager should help to complement one another. And the relationship between these actors is a critical one. Common vocabulary needs to be used to have the team on the same playing field. So if you notice that there's a need to invest in training to make this happen, you do so. And you want to create that healthy tension inside your teams. Each role on that team needs to be able to articulate to one another what they need and what they want. You've got to find that nice balance between people and process. That's crucial. Is the business analyst providing you enough information to make the right decisions? If you're a project manager, for example, even a product owner. Is quality innovation aligned with problem solving? Is the business analyst asking the right questions? I mean, how do you bring more value to the end users? Are you, as a business analyst, are you helping to drive where the product is going? Are you reducing any uncertainty? I mean, where do you collaborate specifically with stakeholders? That's where the communication is essential. I have to note that your project is going to fail without this optimal element of communication. It's finding the right tone, finding the right content for those conversations that can be a challenge. But it's also finding the courage, or having the courage, perhaps even, to know when and how to act when you're confronting those challenges. And that's the key to those productive product outcomes. Is there end-to-end accountability for that product success in that customer journey? Have you given clarity to the developers on how to build those features and how to build those components? You've got to think of how things can constantly be iterated, can constantly be upgraded. You've got to be passionate about what it is you do. Remember that software is not the issue. It's that communication, that sage communication, that's going to help you build those relationships to help you get things done. So you got to motivate the right people with the right skills, the right qualities, and have them behind the vision of the product. And that's when you're going to have fabulous services that are going to grow out of this. You should also try to encourage a certain degree of creativity among your team. This way, the team embraces learning. You've got to elicit, you've got to employ their feedback. You got to respond to your stakeholders. You've got to be empathetic to your team. You've got to be understanding emotionally to your team. It's all about emotional intelligence. You got to know how your customers can better use your service. You want to try and build business with them and longer relationships. Let's take a look at this stakeholder commitment curve for a bit. And this is going to give us an idea of how you can better engage your stakeholders. We take a look at this commitment curve. We start from, how do you get the stakeholders on board? I mean, whatever you're going to roll out, how do you get them on board? You got to take a good look at your communication plan. If you have one, you should have one. And that's going to help you spell out how to share those ideas, how to share expectations with your stakeholders. How are you going to stay informed? You've also got to know how to engage your stakeholders throughout each step of that commitment curve. I mean, that's how you're going to get stakeholder buy-in. You have to get out of this conversation with the stakeholders, you know, the epic stories, the requirements, the features, whatever it is that you need that you didn't have when you started that conversation. Another way to engage the stakeholders is to be very specific about their needs. Did you say this? Did you mean that? So you've got to use the right type of engagement activities at the right time. You've got to gradually build that commitment to change. Assess where your stakeholder lies or sits on that commitment curve. I mean, where is it that you want them to end up in this initiative? And how are you going to get them there? You've got to move your stakeholder from this level of awareness to one of being aware of the vision, aware of the mandate, aware of the objectives of the product, of the project as well. So you've got to set those key foundational messages in place for your project at the beginning. You got to move to a level of understanding with your stakeholders to avoid any negative perceptions. You don't want any negativity on any of your projects. You got to provide visible leadership commitment through those targeted communications, if you will. You got to move to a level of acceptance where you build buy-in for this change by providing the right information and the right support at the right time. You've got to engage stakeholders by getting them involved as early as possible in the project. This is key. This is crucial. This way, if you do so, your stakeholders really feel that they're making a contribution with a higher sense of value on the project. And they're going to be more likely to adopt your decisions, or even adopt the decisions and the plans that you've had the opportunity to influence, or that they've had the opportunity to influence earlier on in the project. Then you move to this level of project commitment where you're going to bring out those project details to life for the stakeholders, right? You're going to help to sustain that future state by embedding that change as that new way of operating. So in quick summary, we've got to look here. What's the value of a business analyst in an agile world? I mean, do you know what's going on in those trenches with the business analysts, with the developers? If you're a product owner, if you are a project manager, if you're a senior business analyst, are you having those purposeful conversations with your team? If you're familiar with those detailed requirements, with that accepted criteria, with those detailed planning elements to help you implement those requirements, how do you do it in an agile way? Where you may not even know much about the product in the early stages. And that environment, like I said, it's unpredictable. It's constantly changing. I mean, how do you adapt to that? Some of the elements I've described earlier. So effective communication, effective engagement, we all know it's really essential. It's an essential component in helping to manage that constant change, especially along that commitment curve that I described. I want to leave you with a famous quote from Peter Drucker. The most important thing in communication is to hear what isn't being said. And quickly, before I conclude, I just want to mention that I work for IVAS Consulting, and we do a bit of project management consulting, some business analysis consulting. I also run a YouTube podcast channel called The Inquisitive Analyst, where I chat with project managers and business analysts in the field, and what are their triumphs, what are their challenges. I like to think of it as being inspiring, informative, and inquisitive. Last but not least, the Lewis Institute, which we partner with, IVAS Consulting partners with, they run courses that help certify project leaders and prepare you for the PMP exam. So check them out if you want, the Lewis Institute. And I also want to thank NIPCA and Black Tech for having me to speak here today. I also want to wish all of you a wonderful and fabulous rest of the day. But before that, if you have any questions, I'm certainly open to answer them. Oh, you're on mute, Vanessa.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Marcus. That was a very informative session and very informative presentation. And we at NIPCA, really do appreciate your time and all that. And so we will be opening the floor to questions. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand up and I will unmute you. And we
I see a question from Marguerite Alois.
Yes.
Right.
So I guess her question is, how do you build an MVP if integration between systems is required for your product to work?
Shouldn't be a problem. You may not need all systems to be integrated. You say maybe you need 6 systems in full for the full project. Maybe you can get this MVP done with 2 systems as a good example. Or maybe each of your systems can just work at a minimal amount to get that MVP output. Hope that helps, Marguerite.
Awesome, awesome. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand up.
I have a question for anyone in the audience. How's that?
Okay.
How many folks here are business analysts or even project managers who have moved into an agile world and your office says, we don't have room for a business analyst or a project manager. You'll have to go and do some training and get your title changed. Has anyone done that? Has anyone transitioned to? You can just put your hand up, your little emoticon hand up. Anyone that's transitioned at work? Because I know many offices might say, now we're going to do Agile. And I've worked with project managers and BAs who have had to go get certificates like maybe your Agile certificate of some sort. And now all of a sudden they're not project managers, they're Scrum Masters. Their title changed, they're doing almost the same thing, but it's in an Agile environment. So I was curious if anyone here has gone through that change, that type of change. No one here. Interesting. Well, you might. You never know. It might happen. Any other questions? How about this for a question? Because I know that NIPCA and Black Tech do help many people gain skills during training in order to get into the workforce. How many people have just recently got a business analyst job, just out of curiosity, or even just looking for a business analyst job? We got some people. Okay. I help to mentor some people going into the workforce. And the big thing I see, oh, I have lots of hands up. Wow, lots of hands up. And the big thing I see from people that I mentor is a number of things. One, how do you put your resume together? Some people will do a generic resume and send it all out. I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend that you look specifically at the job description and take out some elements from the job description and put them into your resume. There's a really well-known Nigerian out of the UK by the name of Phil Akinwale, and he's got some really good videos on this on his YouTube channel. He works for a company, his company name is called Praizon or Praizon, Praizon. And he is the only person I know out there in project management that specifically goes into intimate detail on how to put your resume together. Now, he's talking more for the UK environment, but it's kind of similar for the North American environment too. So Phil Akinwale with 2 L's, P-H-I-L-L, Phil Akinwale, check him out.
Awesome, awesome. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to raise your hand up or unmute yourself. Okay, Omoni has a question, so you can ask your question.
Okay, Moni.
Hi, Marcus. Thanks so much for the information. It's quite enlightening. For me, I kind of find it difficult to keep changing my resume. Like I could play a role of a BA, I could play a role of a PM, I could play a role of a Scrum Master. I even have certification of them. Really, my background is I did PMP. I started out as a project manager several years back, and I did my PMP like 10 years ago. So later on, I started seeing more like a BA competing with my role. So I have to switch role. Then recently, Agile came out in the last 5 years. Then I have to start thinking in Agile line. Then I got my certification. Now, to be switching my resume, especially on my LinkedIn profile, I don't really, sometimes I do like, I'm a PM, I'm a BA, I'm a Scrum Master, but it's confusing. And when most recruiters come across to you, they'll tell you that they are looking for a project manager, but when you're discussing, you just realize that you're looking for a Scrum Master. And it will become like an argument, and you're like, okay, don't worry. It's a bit confusing because at a point now, I'm starting thinking like, oh, maybe we should stop calling the role like a project leader. Like you mentioned something that I really like. Let's forget about the title. When you get to the job, see where you can fit in, and make sure that okay, you are adding value to the project.
That's true. And the thing is, it really depends on who's interviewing you first. Is it HR? Is it the actual manager who will be hiring you?
Most time the recruiting manager now, not the hiring manager. So at that point, I don't like playing along. I just want to have as much information as possible. So as a recruiter, if you can clarify to me exactly what the role is, then I'm setting up myself to fail, kind of.
3 quick things. 1, find something you are passionate about and stay with it, either business analysis or project management. Don't mix them up. You may have been a project manager at one time, and maybe now you're a business analyst. Fine, you can describe this on LinkedIn between 2 different jobs. But you've got to be specific about what type of job you're looking for. So in your headliner at the top, you might say business analyst. Maybe that's what you want to focus on. You don't have to talk about project management.
Okay.
Or you can mention project manager. Don't mention business analyst, because that's what you're looking for.
Okay.
So be specific. Second of all, I wouldn't say, like I said, don't just have one resume. Have 3 or 4 resumes. Have one resume for healthcare, one for IT, one for government. And then when you see the job you want, now you have to drill down even further. Maybe this is the government job you want, or let's say healthcare. Okay, now you take your healthcare resume and you tweak it even more. This is what Phil Akinwale talks about. You take some of those phrases and keywords in the job description, you put them in your resume. Okay. For a number of reasons. 1, because it could be an HR person looking at it, and all they know are the keywords that are on the job description. Also, sometimes your resume gets put into these automated computer programs that are looking for keywords that are only on the job description.
Okay.
So those are 2 items. The third thing is, look for this gent here. Can't see it with my visual one.
Yeah,
this is called interview intervention, communication that gets you hired, by a fellow by the name of Andrew Latsavita. He is on the internet, huge, has a big YouTube channel.
Okay.
You may or may not have heard of him, but he's got like a top 10 method on how to go about looking for jobs. Okay. And he also has free PDF files that you can download. I've got many of them. In fact, I can even give them to Vanessa. They're on my shared drive, and you can have access to them. Okay. Essentially, what Andrew talks about is how you go about selling yourself to your clients. And one of the things he says is you could send an email, not necessarily to the HR department, but specifically to the manager that's doing the hiring at an organization. Just one example. The last resort would be going to recruiters, for example, that's his. So he's got a top 10 list on how to go about looking for jobs. Andrew Lasavita, check him out.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it right away. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's helpful.
Awesome, awesome. Does anybody else have any questions? Anything that they would like to ask Marcus that they're confused about, or anything whatsoever? Feel free to raise your hand up, and we'll.
No other questions about the Agile environment? What's the name of the YouTube channel? Two of them. Yeah, so let me just type in the name here. Lasavita. So that's Andrew Lasavita. That's the fellow to do with how to find jobs. And then this is the fellow out of Praison. He works for Praison. That's his company. But so you look for on YouTube for Phil Akinwale or for Praison, you'll get the videos.
I have a question here. Good evening.
Okay.
Okay. My camera is off. I apologize for that.
No
okay,
worries.
so for me, transitioning, my background is in education. I'm transitioning into learning and development. Yeah, and the confusion for me right now is L&D HR role or an IT role? Because looking at job descriptions, I see the requirement is have a knowledge of Agile, methodology, Scrum, and a lot of IT methodologies generally for the L&D role. So what do you advise in terms of the knowledge I need to gain for me to transition into that L&D role?
I've done some instructional design, which falls into learning and development. And there might be learning and development in a variety of different avenues. That you could find learning and development in healthcare. You can find it in oil and gas. You can find it in IT. So you might want to be specific on your resume on which learning and development you're looking for, right? The other thing is resumes will put the 50 things you have to learn. You have to know for the job. Nobody can know 50 things, even 20 things. I know someone who saw 14 softwares that needed to be learned for a job. So my friend went out, just got a high level understanding of these 14 softwares, went for the interview, got the job only to learn that they only have to use one software. They need a filtering process, and to give you all this stuff on the resume is one way to filter out. So people who are fearful, maybe like yourself, might not even apply. Oh, that's what they want. So you just ignore all that silliness. And
honestly, yeah, sorry to cut you. I feel like I'm not ready because I see the requirement. I'm like, I don't have all of this. So the background is there in instructional design, facilitation and all that. But then all those new methodologies and software, the knowledge of that is not even, I don't even have it yet.
You might not think you have it. But sometimes just doing a bit of reading on the internet or even buying a book on it might help. A 200-page book, 100-page book, you have enough of a high level to have a conversation with someone at an interview. I would recommend going to the interviews because it gives you practice. And after the third or fourth interview, you're going to, now I know the questions they want to ask.
Okay.
Now I know how I need to react. By the way, Andrew Lasavita gives you a list of questions that you should be asking the interviewer. Because you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. You just don't want to work with anyone. You want to work with someone who has these values that you also share. Yeah. So I would say just one book, maybe even an ebook on instructional design or learning and development, get a high level of it, enough of a conversation to have with an interviewer. You might even find during the interview, they find you have a skill that they also need that they didn't put on the job description. And they might ask, oh, maybe you'll be better at this job instead, which pays a bit more. You never know.
Thank you.
We have a question in the chat box, and it looks like a pretty interesting question. It is there a clear distinction between Scrum, PM, and BA? It seems the lines are blurred between them all. I am also trying to transition from my current role.
Ayodeji, what is your current role, if I may ask? No response yet. Okay, I will say, is there a clear distinction between Scrum, PM, and BA? In theory, yes, there is. Okay, customer service. In theory, yes, there are clear distinctions. But you will find a lot of overlap in practice. You will find people who are quality assurance employees who do some business analyst work. You might find a business systems analyst who does a lot of business analyst work. You might find a project manager in a small company who has to do some business analyst work. You see what I mean? And it varies from company to company. I have never gone into a job where they've said, this is the BA job between A and B or C, and you need to stay in this path and don't change. I got in a job and they said, Marcus, we need you to fix up this printer. Well, have you heard of business analysts fixing printers? But I did it. I didn't want to lose my job. But you know what? It was a special printer that printed access cards. So now I had to learn how the software worked for this printer. Well, that wasn't on the job description. All of a sudden on my job, I have to learn something else. And recently we've had people at my job, one person got COVID and he is a part developer. Well, now they need someone to be able to create user accounts. Well, my manager said, give Marcus access to the user accounts and teach him how to support this software. That wasn't in my job description. But now all of a sudden in an emergency, I have to learn something. And that's exactly the same case with Scrum, PM, and BA roles. You know, the job description might say you have to do something, but once you get in the job, you find it's totally different and you'll start learning different things anyway. So build up your skills. I hope I've answered that well. Ayodeji, I hope.
Does anybody else have any questions that they would like to ask?
So, sorry to cut you short, Vanessa. Good evening, everyone. I want to kind of indulge or push everyone on the call to make sure we maximize the attention we have from Marcus while he's on the call. I know a lot of us here are taking Black Tech programs in business analysis. A lot of us here have our sights set on becoming business analysts. Indeed, it is a very huge job space right now in the market. Many people are also trying to pivot into IT. So the idea is, and I've met a lot of people, you know, in my time at NIPCA, who want to come in and they believe that their first brush is by being a BA. Now, you don't necessarily have to start as an Agile BA, but I'm pretty sure Marcus here is well versed, whether you are whether you are going to come in as a traditional BA, a hybrid BA, or just even a BA, whatever your imagination of being a BA is. So for all the myths you have heard, for example, I know people walk up to me and tell me, oh, they've heard if they are not in IT, they cannot thrive as a BA. That is wrong, right? So let us use this call, let's make it interactive, right? Don't worry about the kind of questions you're going to ask. There is no such thing as a silly question. The most important thing is for us to all learn. Many of us sitting on these calls are getting new jobs, are in training to get new jobs, and you have an expert here who has a lot of experience under his belt. Suggest that, you know, we use this opportunity to gain as much background knowledge as we have in combination with our theory, even if it is an interview preparation questions, what you should say, how you should comport yourself. Well, Marcus is on the call right now. I would be, if I had any questions, if I had anything I wanted demystified, I would, you know, use the opportunity to come out in the group. You don't have to have a solid question. There's no, what is the word? There's no fear or shame of asking a silly question. I do know there are many people here who are sitting on the fence who want to ask 1 or 2 questions and are taking their time to think. Let's not think, let's act. Marcus is here. He still has a lot of time. So he's giving you guys 90 minutes of his time for you guys to drill him. I think we're letting him off easy. You know, if Marcus is now the one asking us questions, when I know there are over 80 people on this call who have questions and we want to let him walk away, well, I wouldn't say that that is what NIPCA stands for. We stand to provide knowledge. Marcus today is our source of knowledge. If we don't utilize the source of knowledge, how do you even want to be a successful BA going tomorrow? No BA goes into any meeting and sits down from beginning to the end. If you don't ask questions, you don't talk. He's giving a whole presentation on collaboration, engagement. This is your pedestal to start displaying those skills. You have to learn to ask questions, uncomfortable questions, but in very respectful ways, if I might add, right? You will never be one thing. You will continue to transition. He's told you he's fixed printers. I used to be a BA where I transitioned from being an IT support person into BA, into project management. I can understand his whole flow. There is no job you enter. I always tell people, if you want to be a BA, you must be willing to go above and beyond. That's the only job description it takes to actually do well in that job. Because you come in as one thing and you realize you're doing everything else and almost not what you came in as. So please, I want to challenge us. This is not how our learning sessions go. I don't want Marcus to get off easy. It's taking us quite a lot to get his time. You can ask him, he's here, we've been pursuing him for months. And then he comes here and then we just want to ask 7 questions. No, if you guys don't ask questions, I'll practically turn off my camera, go on Google and start asking questions about business analysis. So that even if you don't want to ask the questions, you will learn from the questions that I have to ask. Sorry for, what is the word now? Commandeering your session, Vanessa. But
that's okay. As a result, we have 4 people who have raised their hands up. So,
okay, I was gonna say we can get to those 4 people, but thank you very much, Hugo. In fact, you should be starting to do presentations. Well said.
I'll think about it.
two quick points before we get to questions. I just finished a role as the Vice President of Professional Development for the IIBA Ottawa chapter. July 1st was, or June 30th was my last day. There are 1 or 2 other Nigerians on the Board of Governors. A Nigerian was just voted in as president of the IIBA Halifax chapter. And I think the VP of Professional Development in Halifax is also Nigerian. My point is, one way to get into the business analyst world, if you're curious, is to join an IIBA chapter if you haven't done so already. And with the intention of 1, 2, 3 years to become president, to become vice president, to sit on the Board of Governors. You start off as an assistant your first year, second year, you get into a VP role or director role, third year, you vote for president. Many people don't want to take on these roles. So put up your hand and do so. Yes, it's an administrative role, but it's also a leadership role. And there's nothing more important in any business analyst job than showing that you are a leader. And you can put this on a resume, it will shine. So that's one. Secondly, I'm also a mentor at CRIAC, which is the Calgary Regional Immigration, I forgot the name of it, Council for New Immigrants. And there's one in each major city, including Toronto. There's TRIAC in Toronto. And I had a Nigerian as a mentee a year and a half ago, and I have a Nigerian as a mentee now. So that is my contribution to helping people in the BA and PM world. And it's certainly one route you can take after you finish your courses at NIPCA or Black Tech. So I thought I would throw that out as well. Awesome. Let's start with questions.
Yeah, so Abdul, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you, Ugo, for pushing us. And Marcus, thanks for your time. So I just recently started a new role as a BA in Salesforce domain. So I got employed June 22nd, but on Monday was when I started doing my compliance and ethics with them. So again, the lady who is transferring knowledge to me, she started putting me through on Monday. And there's always a meeting here and there, documents to study. And at the same time, they want me to understand all the products. They want me to know the org. So I'm wondering, is this the way it goes, or is she pushing me too fast, or what do you think I should do? And she's telling me by next week we should finish our KT sections and I can start doing some tasks. So what do you advise? I really want to do well in this job. I want to bring out the best in me.
Most of the time they throw you in the fire or the water. If you can't swim, too bad. That's usually because some companies, they're fast paced. Other companies are a bit slower paced. But regardless, I would recommend what we call 30, 60, and 90 days when you get into a job. What should you know in the first 30 days, first 60 days, first 90 days? They're going to give you time to do some reading, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month. You have to be able to understand their organization, and they know this will take time, at least 6 months to a year, because there are people who have been there for years and have seen the change. So you can't just learn it like this. Chances are they'll give you some documentation, but not all. I'd recommend, if you have access to shared drives, or in these days it's cloud drives, start sifting, start searching through this for documentation. And I will guarantee you there was someone who had your position a year or two ago and wrote lots of documentation, and it's hiding on that shared drive. Go find that, because that's going to help you get through your tough times. After 2 months, even 3 months, if you're still asking questions that might seem simple, that's not the time to ask them. The time to ask those questions are in the first 2 to 3 months, and lots of questions. After that, they might say, why are you asking a stupid question? I told you this 2 months ago. So make notes as you go along, make notes, have your file on your hard drive or on a backup hard drive, in a text file, in a Word document, screenshots, so you can go back and review them. You might even want to ask your boss, your manager, what's the most important thing you want me to start learning first? Because part of that interview, when you went to the interview to get the job, one of the first questions you should have asked, and Andrew Lasavita points this out in his book, one of the first questions you should have asked is, in the first 6 months, where do you see my role sitting? I mean, where should I be in 6 months? What should I know in 6 months? So you are already prepped before you even get into the job.
Yes, I asked him, sorry to cut you, I did ask, and I was told in the first 3 months, they give me time to understand the org,
Yep.
to understand the business and all that before they start giving me any task.
Oh, true, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. 3 months. I mean, you're still going to be asking questions after that, but they're going to be much more complex questions than the simple ones in the first 3 months, right? So I think what your experience is what I've experienced. It's what many other people have experienced. And you might find in some places you have to pick up the pace. But as you get to know things, then, and you build this trust with your boss, oh, now Abdul is the go-to person. When I asked him to do something, he did it well. He had to do some research to find out, oh, you know what? I'm going to Abdul next time. Oh, you know that other person I have, this other BA, he's been here 3 years. That man is not the man I want, or that woman's not the one I want. I want Abdul, because Abdul is like this. That's how you keep your job, and that's how you learn more.
Thank you.
Abdul, if I can just add, you're already in the job. So there are a couple of things that I always advise new BAs on the job to do. And the first thing I wanted to say, which Marcus said, is have a 90-day plan. It makes you be proactive, right? So once you have a 90-day plan, they understand what your learning mantra is. Your boss can see it. You've helped him say, this is what I want to do. You've helped him know what your pace is. And that is great. That is a very good tool to have in your first week on the job. The second thing I'm going to tell you to do is, in setting expectations of your boss, have one-on-one meetings. You can actually plan them yourself in his own calendar for 3 months, 6 months. Those meetings help you refine your own knowledge or their expectations of you as you go every week, right? So build it, make it your own thing. And these are things that actually make you stand out from the rest, because you've been on the job for 1 week. If you haven't seen these practices in play already, introduce them. right? It's not so much as coming in and doing the job. It's coming in and looking for ways to stand out. Like Marcus just said towards the end, you want to be that BA that when they think of, oh, who is the resource we can count on? It is Abdul, they call. So you come in, you look around. Also, finally, yes, this is an opportunity for you to be what I like to term a sponge. You will soak up water, you will soak up knowledge. But in doing that too, you must also remember that you must constantly engage. No man is an island. You have to introduce yourself to your team. Know the people. Once you know what you need to be learning, you need to know the resources that are leading that initiative. You have to darken their doorways, like I like to say in my own meetings. Because when I know I'm going to disturb you, I tell you, oh my God, I hope you won't mind me darkening your doorway. You know, that means I'm coming to stand in your doorway and reduce the light until you settle my problem. You must be proactive. Don't sit down and wait. I tell everyone who is a BA is a walking thesaurus. Anyone, any day, anywhere, at any time can stop you for any status on any project you are doing. And you must be able to communicate it effectively depending on the audience that you are talking to. Understand who you are in the role, and you will know exactly what you should do to take command of your role.
I should also add that every manager will be different. Some managers may want to meet with you every 2 days when you first start. Some may only want to meet with you once a week. Or they may say, maybe in the first month we'll meet 2 or 3 times a week, and by the second month, we'll just meet once a week. They'll change it up over time. Also, if you have these quick wins, in the first 30 days, maybe you did something the boss wanted, you showed him or her. Oh, wow, nice. Oh, that's good. Oh, good job. Now you've started to gain their trust, and you start doing that over and over again. You might get to a point where maybe you have a skill, maybe like editing videos, for example. And you do an instructional video, maybe you overhear someone saying, we need an instructional video for something. And you create this video. They say, oh, there's something else Abdul can do. Nice. Oh, he has another skill. So, and you never know, before you know it, they might decide to put you in charge of a small team. And in less than a year, you might become a senior business analyst. And if you really want to move further up, who knows, they might, after 3-4 years, you might become a project manager in charge of a larger team. So you have to show your worth.
Thank you.
Awesome. Chinwe, if you're there, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Marcus. Thank you for that insightful presentation. So I have a question, but I would like to build up on the question that Abdul asked. So Ugo also mentioned the strategy for the first 3 months, but my question is, if you're called into a project and there are chunks of tasks on the Azure DevOps that has not been assigned to you by the PM, because I had a project where the PM had to assign tasks, and those tasks on the board, you're not able to, you don't understand some of them because it's a new space for you, right? Are you as a business analyst supposed to take initiatives to pick up on tasks that you don't know, or wait for them to assign those tasks to you? That is one. Then my second question is, when you have a PM and you have a BA on a project, who writes the user story and acceptance criteria on the Azure Dev or on the board? Who does that? I'm still trying to gain clarity on who actually does that.
Okay, well, let's tackle this who does what task.
Yeah.
And then we'll tackle what task you are supposed to do. Yeah, by definition, maybe the product owner is supposed to create that list of user stories, the next tasks that should be done. I mean, they won't make this a uniform decision. They have to talk to their team to come to a conclusion. And it's the same with the business analyst role. You can't work, like Ugo said, no man is an island. You can't work alone. You need a team to function effectively. Sometimes, okay, say in a team, the product owner is going to write down all these tasks. And one day the product owner is away and sick. So who does it now? Is there another product owner available? Oh no, Chinwe is a business analyst. Chinwe has been watching the product owner and working. Oh, let Chinwe do it just for this week or 2. The product owner returns and says, oh, Chinwe is so good at this. Now I can go and do something else. Why don't you take over? It might happen this way. Or it might happen that they say, well, you know what, we have a business analyst in this environment, like I mentioned in my presentation. This is an agile environment, but why don't you let the business analyst do this and take some of these tasks off the product owner? And this is where these blurred lines of responsibilities come in. Take the initiative and take it over. Oh, if you don't mind, can I please be in charge of helping you with these tasks? Or can I assist you this time? That's how you get your foot in. Even though you're a business analyst, doesn't matter. Just take on enough responsibilities that you don't feel overwhelmed, but that your boss is able to notice that, Chinwe's a go-getter. Chinwe asks questions. Chinwe wants to help us get problems solved. Next time they'll ask you to do something else. Soon you're going to ask them for a raise. Hey, I've been working here 1 year, if you don't mind. You never know. They might say, you won't get unless you ask,
Sure.
You won't get unless you ask. Yeah.
Just to add to that, to Chinwe, I always ask people, if you are given an easy task and a difficult task, which task would you take? Most people say they'll take the easy task. And I ask them why. And they say it's because they know they will deliver. Well, you know what I tell people? Take the hard one. Because many people knew it was hard and they left it. If you fail, it still counts in positivity that you tried.
Right. Okay.
Do you understand? It is way better than that you take a difficult task, or you introduce an initiative, or you work out of your own initiative and innovation, and you don't get the job done. Don't damage anything, Just start it and then realize that you are stuck, and then let them know that, okay, you are stuck. Than just being reactive on your role. Remember what I said in my answer to Abdul. As a BA, you are a thesaurus. You are the gel of the entire team, right? So whether you like it or not, you are part developer, you are part tester, you are part product owner. Anything that needs a deputant, it is you.
Right.
And that is why I said, I closed my answer to Abdul by saying, know your role and you will take command of it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I always tell people this, as BAs, and I want to say this on the call, you see BAs, when there's a failure in a project, 90% of the times is attributed to the errors of a BA. You didn't get the estimations right. You didn't gather the right requirements. You didn't do this. But 90% of the time when a project is successful, guess who gets the credit? The project manager. Understand this. You will always be in that eye of the storm. Manage it. As a role, it actually refines your person. It makes you, I used to talk a lot though. 3 years ago, if you knew me, I was not this a talker. I used to be a network guy in a back room. Do you understand? So doing the job for 3 years plus over time, volunteering in NIPCA, all those things, the skill sets, as you can see now, have actually refined my personal self, right? Normally we enter this session before and be quiet. When it finishes, it finishes. I'll take my knowledge and go away. But now I am talking. You see that I talk. I may not say the right thing. Some people may disagree with me, but I'm still saying what I feel is right. And you have to take those stances. You can't enter meetings and not ask questions as a BA. That is your job. Do you understand? Take initiatives. Tell your project manager, oh, I noticed this stories have been sitting in the backlog for so long. Can we go into a planning session? I would like to look to see if I can get some of these tasks done so that we can get this project moving. You will shock everybody there.
On that note, Howard Podeswa out of Toronto has written a number of books on business analysis, and I've interviewed him on my YouTube show. And he's written one recently about the business analyst in an agile world or something like that. Check it out, because he's got another book on the things a business analyst the questions a business analyst should ask.
What's the name again?
I'll find the book and I'll send it to Vanessa. I can't remember offhand. But essentially, I have.
Don't worry about the book. Just everybody, Marcus will put his LinkedIn here. Pursue him on LinkedIn. Marcus loves to type. He's a very good orator. He loves to type. Just ask him one question. He'll answer even the ones you haven't asked. So just take a note of his handles, his LinkedIn handles, and follow him after the class. Ask him your questions there. He'll provide all the resources you need.
But it is good to ask. It is good to ask questions, as Ugo said. If you don't ask questions, believe me, your boss will probably think either you don't know or that you're stupid. Either way, it won't augur well with the boss. So you should ask the questions in a meeting. 1 hour meeting, 2 or 3 questions at least.
Okay, we'll take one more question and then we'll Marcus, do you have extra time to answer a few more questions?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, Grace, do you mind unmuting yourself, please?
Okay, hello everybody. My question is, I want to know what you need to do to like get in an interview setting as a business analyst. What do you need to do? Are the things you need to say or how you need to say it to be able to, to get the BA role? Because I've been in some interviews and I don't, at the end of the day, like second level interviews and I don't get called back. And I just wonder what I did wrong because to me, I feel I answered everything the way I should have done it. But I really want to know the staff factor you need to have to, to get the job.
One star factor people think you might need is, like Jakub has mentioned here, what is the importance of the CBAP certification in business analysis? Can I get a BA role without certification? You can go to a job interview and not have a certification and still get a job. So if you're not certified, don't fear. Even the CBAP, there's the ECBA, beginner level certification. You could take that if you feel you don't have experience, because CBAP, you need so many years of experience working in the job. Some contracts or some jobs, like in the government, if they have a project, federal government, provincial government, and they specifically say on that job description, you need CBAP or ECBA certification, there is no way that you can work around this. You have to have that certification. Those are just rules of the government. In a private sector, you might be able to talk your way out of it. So I just want to put that aside for you, Grace, as one option. Secondly, when you're answering a question, be very precise with your answer. Take 2 to 3 minutes to answer each question. Make sure you're answering exactly what they ask. I know here I can go off, like Ugo said, and answer questions that haven't been asked, but I wouldn't do that in an interview. You have to be more clear, very clear and precise about the answer. 9 times out of 10, a business analyst job is a communicator of change. You're a vessel of change. If you can communicate well with someone in the interview, they'll probably take you, even though they say, oh, well, he's weak on one skill, but we're strong on 2 other skills. That's fine. We'll train on this other skill. So you have to be very clear and precise about your answer. And I would say some people use the STAR method. You can look this up, the STAR method. What was the problem? What was the solution? And how did I help resolve it? That's an easy way to answer a question. They might ask you, what difficult situation have you been in and how did you deal with it? What was the problem? What was the solution? How did I resolve it? 2 to 3 minutes to answer the question. Check out Andrew Lasavita again, his YouTube channel, because he goes through many of these types of questions and how to answer them. And the PDF files that I will give Vanessa will also help you with these.
And then Grace, we also have a career accelerator group within NIPCA that actually helps do a lot of interview preparations. You can send an email to careers@nipca.ca. They will actually, zone a proper BA to actually prep you for your interviews. So when you have these interviews, just utilize that. It's a resource that many of us are also not aware of it. And it's not just for BAs, it's for cybersecurity people, Salesforce, IT, infrastructure, the whole lot. It's a huge group made of volunteers from different sectors in IT that come out to help people prepare for their interviews. So when you need it, it's a resource that's available. You just need to know when to tap into it.
Let me just answer Margaret's question very quickly about, do you need CBAP versus PMI BA? Just to make a clarity here on definitions. So CBAP is with the International Institute of Business Analysis, and PMI, the Project Management Institute, has a certification called PMI BA or something like that, PMBA or something. They're quite different. CBAP is strictly business analysis in an IT world. IIBA tends to focus on IT. the IT sector more. PMI's version of the BA is really how project managers want to have an understanding of the business analyst role, so they take this course. Or someone who is doing both a business analyst and a project manager role. This course will help you. And it's offered by a lady out of Toronto, PMI's Toronto chapter. And I think there's only one person who offers that course that I know of, but it's online through the PMI chapter. So anyway, Frankie.
Okay, hi. I've worked in 2 organizations as a BA, or 2 or more, like last 2 actually, and they said that they've started Agile, and when I got to the teams, I heard the term Wagile. That's mixture of waterfall and Agile. And I discovered that they were quite heavy on documentation. And being the BA, it's fell on me, you understand? So the next organization also, they said, is Scrum Ban. And the next thing everybody's asking, we want the Agile requirement document. And going through the Scrum framework and certification and all, is it possible for organizations to actually practice Scrum in its truest form? And secondly, how do we advise organizations to reduce the reliance on documentation, since we already have the artifacts on the backlog and on the Jira or Azure board, whatever it is that they're using? So that's what keeps coming to my mind. And most times when I hear all this Agile and Scrum Ban, I just laugh and say, you guys are not ready to practice Agile in its truest form.
Scrum Ban, there's no manifesto for Scrum Ban, but there is for Agile. There's the Agile manifesto. So Scrum Ban is just the term people have coined for Scrum and Kanban mixed together. Agile is the same. It's just a term, a hybrid of Agile and waterfall. I seldom see, the thing is, okay, let's say documentation, you're always going to have it. Some organizations like a lot of it, like the big oil companies, and the smaller companies might just say, okay, just give me 2-3 pages. A good example is the company I work for now. They needed an executive letter to be written. Now, normally it'd be maybe 2 pages. They said, just dispense with all this stuff. We don't have it. You just have a simple template. Give me half a paragraph. That's it. That's all I need. So every company will be different. Some, I did a documentation 20 pages long. That's too much. Just give me 5 pages. That's all we need. But if I worked for an oil company, there's no way they would be like that. They'd be much more precise on their documentation. It could take you months to do it. I don't think, even in an Agile environment, maybe just the IT department is Agile, but the business runs in waterfall. They have a 2-year, 3-year plan. And so, yes, you're going to work iteratively on that little piece of software you're building, but you have to follow those waterfall strategies that the business has laid out for you. And even in a larger company where you have a big IT department, maybe only one section of that IT department does software development and uses Agile. Maybe there's another IT department that does just documentation. Maybe they don't work in Agile. Maybe they work in waterfall. Maybe there's an IT department that does training. They don't work in Agile. They work in waterfall. So I think there's always going to be a mix, either on that small IT team, or it's going to be Agile in one department and waterfall. And, so you might hear the term business agility. So this is businesses trying to become more Agile and try to parallel how software development is being done. So I mean, that's another story. But I think it really, the amount of documentation you put in really depends on what it is your organization wants. You're not there to say, this is what I want to do. You're there to say, what does the organization want me to do? So I hope that's helped.
Yeah, thank you.
Usually organizations will have templates that you need to follow as well. And if there's not a template, you can find your own or make your own. But this is what Ugo was talking about. I hope I have the right name right. Going back and forth. You have that documentation. You've written some piece of it. You've met with your boss this week. Verify. Is this it? Is this correct? No. Go back and fix this up. Oh, okay, I'll go back. If you don't do this communication with the developers and with the people on your team and just write it up yourself, that's not the way to go. People won't look at you well that way. So you always have to keep that conversation going with your team on how you should document that piece of work.
Awesome. We'll take the last two questions for the night. So Damilare, if you're there, please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you very much, Vanessa. Thank you, Hugo. And very special thanks to Marcus for this wonderful session. And so I have a couple of questions. I had experience, my past experience was in quality assurance in manufacturing. And I recently, about 5 years ago, I recently moved into supply chain procurement as a category manager. So currently consulting with GEP worldwide. But I did some training through NIPCA and some other organization late last year in business analyst role, learning Jira, Kanban, Scrum, and all those. And I started looking for a job. I got I have an offer on the table, which is basically a product analyst, supply chain, which is actually good for me because of my background in procurement. And I did the interview. I scaled through talking about all these tools, which I've never really used in real life. But through the training, like Ugo was saying, I was able to get a job. But my question is this: the organization is a manufacturing pharmaceutical organization. They're building a supply chain control tower. And they want me to be the BA guy, working with other BA guys, but basically majoring in supply chain, I think because I can speak supply chain language. So they want me to walk through the whole process from cradle to grave. But I've never, I read about control tower, supply chain control tower, but my question is, can you give me a high level of what to expect? Because I'm supposed to have started job, but one reason or the other, I think the background check is still going on. And so this is an opportunity when Ugo was saying it, that you ask any question. So that's why I brought it up. Can you give me an overview, a summary of what to expect? Then they're asking me for proof of concept, POC, I don't know what that is. MVP, someone asked MVP, I don't know what that is. If you can just please give me an overview of what to expect in my first onboarding process, 30, 60, 90 days, what to expect in this role for me to be successful.
I think this parallels to what Ugo said. Is this a difficult task or an easy task? So let's call this a difficult task.
It is a difficult task. I know that, but I'm not scared. If I fail at it, I know that I did it.
The other thing is, if you already know all this stuff, why are you in this job?
If I what?
If you know everything, then why take the job? The reason why people think,
I don't know. I don't
exactly
know.
well, people never know 100% of what they're going into, because usually by the time you learn 100%, you're moving on to upgrade to another position, maybe a management position, for example, or a senior business analyst. And they know you don't know all this information from cradle to grave, but there's books out there that can explain it. And I guarantee you that most people on the team, with the exception of maybe the project manager, most people don't know all of this either. And that's why they've been hired. They're either cheap labor because they don't know it all. The person who knows it all would be a contractor charging $100 an hour, or $120 an hour. And only big companies can afford that. They'll only hire 1 or 2 people like this. The rest of the people don't know everything. And there's some companies that are notorious for this, like Deloitte and Accenture. They often hire people on teams who don't know much, 50% at best. But the manager of the team understands it. Cheap labor. So my recommendation is, yes, you know a few things. And they're not going to throw them all on you so that they swallow you up with too much information. I'd recommend maybe an hour or 2 a day or half an hour. I read on the train when I go to work, on the C train. Sometimes at work, I have some lunchtime, I'm reading something. Even during the office, I had to learn how to install this particular plugin. I'm not going to do it at home. I have work time to do that. So I took an hour to read the documentation, go through the 40 pages, try to understand it. You're always going to learn like this. And this will add to your cradle to grave knowledge. By the time a year comes up, 6 months to a year, the new person who comes in will be asking you questions. So it's always a learning experience, And I think we as humans, yes, we like to learn, but we're not always open to change. So you have to think in the back of your mind, no matter what happens, like if your boss tells you have to move your office, like my boss told me, I have to move my office. What? I've only been here 8 months. I didn't complain because this is change. I have to accept it. So same with a project. You're working through a project. Someone all of a sudden says, oh, remember that step 5 we talked about 5 weeks ago? We have to change it. Why now? No, you have to be open to change. Yes, I want to accept it. So you're constantly learning, you're constantly looking up information on the internet or reading books. So soon you will understand cradle to grave process.
Just to add to that, Damilare, I want you to know that there's no job you're doing today that no one hasn't already done, right? So the question to you is, are you a member of NIPCA? If yes, you would see that even on our Telegram channel, people come and ask for specific document templates and they get it. People drop questions of SOS. We have community engagement managers that even attach a very huge help needed sign. Do you think those people don't get the help they need? They do. If I ask a question and I don't get an answer, I'll keep asking it. The job I have today, they asked me in the interview, why should we hire you? I'll tell you my response to them. I told them, I have 2 reasons. Besides the fact that I believe that I meet most of the expectations of this role, leaving a little room for improvement, because that's what you want on every role. I belong to NIPCA. They were like, what is NIPCA? I told the guy, I said, NIPCA is a group I belong to that has over 4,000 members. There's nothing this job will throw at me that somebody there hasn't been at. This was my direct response to the person. They've hired people from NIPCA, from that role, from that my organization, from this my organization, based on that my talk alone. Again, if you need help, there will be places to get help. You don't even need to go anywhere else. Just say, oh guys, I'm lost in this whole thing. All the people you see that are dropping snippets of needing help in the group, they are all being helped. Go back on the chat if you remember. Reach out to those people and ask them, did any of you ask for help and you didn't get? If any one of them tells you they didn't get, my name is UN on the chat. Ping me and tell me. It is not the community. We may not be talkative. There are 4,000, 2,000 plus people on Telegram. There are 2,000 plus people on LinkedIn. Nobody will leave you stranded. So walk into your role with confidence, knowing that you have a backup. I think you are alone. That is why NIPCA is here. This is a community that is backing you. Tap into it. The same thing I told the lady before you, Grace. We have a lot of support systems in place. Ask. My people have a saying, a man who does not ask, in pidgin, Marcus, you may not understand this. Person when no ask questions, they miss road. You understand? So you must learn to ask questions if you want to know your way. That's the English transliteration. So that is from me to you.
Thank you very much, Ugo. What did you say your name is on Telegram?
It's UN. Just
U.
UN. Simple. Just a simple U and N.
Okay.
Just for the record, I speak some pidgin. Why not say Oga? Why not say Oga? Which is do so. So my accent is just an accent. All right. Daronke.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for all the information. I'm really, really inspired. Like, this is so amazing. I just have a very quick, short question. You asked us to follow someone on YouTube, Andrew. I didn't catch the last name. Andrew, what did you say we should follow?
Andrew Lasavita. I type it for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I'd appreciate that. Yeah, that's all my question. Yeah. Thank you so much. You're doing so well. Like, I feel very inspired with this session and all. I'm transitioning to business analyst. I have a background in education, and I'm really inspired to, like, just go for it and look for the best. Thank you, Marcus.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, those were very amazing and awesome questions. And I want to thank everybody that has joined us for this session. I want to thank everyone that has asked questions. I want to give a very special thank you to our guest today, Marcus, for dropping some very insightful nuggets too, and also Ugo, our well-seasoned BA and project manager. Thank you for your input as well. And with that being said, thank you guys for joining. Ugo has also dropped in the group chat the link to join NIPCA. If you haven't already, please join. We are a group of 2,000 plus members in IT who are working to support and uplift each other. And Marcus, do you have any last comments that you'd like to say?
Last comments. Don't feel that you're alone, like Ugo said. There's other people who are in the same boat as you are now or who have been before. Mm-hmm. So that's why the discussion groups on the PMI, projectmanagement.com, are available. I'm sure NIPCA has something similar, or Black Tech has something similar. So keep engaging with people. That's how you grow.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Ugo, do you have any last comments you'd like to share?
Yes, I want to say a very big thank you to you all. I don't want to use the word proud because none of you here are my kids, but I am really happy that you all came out to ask Marcus questions. I mean, Marcus was having it easy for the first 10, 15 minutes. And I'm like, what is happening here? So I'm glad that you guys actually spruced him out, pulled him from limb to limb. Marcus, on behalf of NIPCA leadership and the team, the leadership, the volunteers, and all the members, want to say a very big thank you. Normally our sessions last 90 minutes. You magnanimously stayed over, and we really appreciate that. Like I said to many of you on the call, you may never have heard of NIPCA before. NIPCA is 4 years this August. And in the 4 years we've done, I'm sure our track record speaks for itself. We've helped over 1,000 people get jobs. I particularly have been involved in a lot of interview preparations, resume preparations, and there are many more like me out there who are helping a lot of you too as well. This year, we also have a summit coming up. For the first time, we partnered with RBC Bank as well. It's holding in Toronto in August. It's going to be hybrid, in person or online. Please do take time to actually be part of it. We have some heavyweight speakers who are coming to speak. It's all about building your network, leveraging platforms. That is where we are today as a people. To gain economical importance, it's not just enough for me to strive and be good. It's that I need to also come from a community that is striving as well as I am. So, and that is one of the things that NIPCA is very intentional about, building that thriving ecosystem for BIPOC-focused tech professionals, right? So please, I've posted the link in the chat. You can join NIPCA if you're not a member of NIPCA. You can also sign up for the conference too as well. And I just want to say a very big thank you to most of you because we've also taken a lot of your time too as well. The founder and president is not around this week. He says I talk too much, but I've also explained why. But once again, thank you all and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful night.